My name's Monk Rowe for the Phillies Jazz Archive at Hamilton College, and I am at Hamilton College. And Jerry Bergonzi, I assume you're in Boston.
Yeah, well, right outside of Boston in Medfield, Massachusetts. Yep.
I'm going to introduce you as a awesome tenor player and a highly respected jazz educator. How's that?
Sounds great to me.
How'd you make it through the real intense COVID years? Where are you a kind of person that can happily fill that time with practice?
I'm going to tell you the what happened. My whole life, I've been traveling, travel. So this is the first time in my life I haven't had to travel, and I loved it. I love being home. Free time, I get to practice, write songs, play the drums, play the piano, play the saxophone, uh, chase my wife around the house. Of course, I'm joking, but you get what I'm saying. It's
Yeah,
wonderful. I didn't have to travel.
nice. And I read you're a bassist, or you
Yeah,
were.
I've
Yeah,
played bass. Yep.
yeah. Did that, in retrospect, help you with hearing chords and figuring out chords, just being more tuned into the music as playing, being the fact that you played the bass?
Yes. Well, that and how to hook up with the drums. How to play time and where to put the beat. That is even more crucial. I mean, of course, because I play piano, I'm I'm hearing the chords, and yeah, with my left hand I can play bass notes, but hearing the dialogue or the interaction between the bass and the drums, which plays more on top, which is behind, with the roll, and that really helped me with that, just to recognize it and to give it a name.
As a saxophone player, have you had instances where the bassist and the drummer seem to not be on the same page as far as where is the groove, where's the beat, and
Yeah,
how do you deal with that?
well, uh, the first thing, first the answer to the first part of the question, of course I recognize that certain drummers sound great with certain bass players. There's a marriage made in heaven with some, and then there's ones that might be great players uh, with other drummers or bass players, but they don't seem to play together great. So without saying names, so for me, my role is to be flexible. I need to like be able to play with this type of rhythm section, with that type of rhythm section. So I always think, man, how should I go about, usually a lot of this is answered unconsciously, but sometimes I think, yeah, I'm gonna play more on top because, or that's what they're playing, so I'm gonna play, more on top of the beat, or I can really lay back with this rhythm section and they won't drag. Because sometimes if I lay back too much, the rhythm section starts dragging. I know there's a story that uh, Joe Hunt, I heard about Joe Hunt playing with Dexter, and he said the first set that he played in 2 week engagement, it really dragged, and he realized for the rest of the 2 weeks he couldn't listen to Dexter. He just had to play time. You know, I get it.
I used to think that imagine being a piano player with like Billie Holiday and making this judgment. Well, do I go with her? Do I play where she's at, or do I just like straight ahead?
Yeah.
You talked about being on the road forever, and if you did one of those gigs like we had you come up here to Utica, New York, and we lined up a rhythm section, are th- is there a short list of tunes that you would call first to sort of try to gauge what you were dealing with?
Well, if I didn't know the rhythm section at all, yeah, maybe I would get a few standards that I would play. And but no different than anybody else would do. It could happen to you, maybe on Green Dolphin Street or a ballad or something like that. I can't get started, or I'd play a tune like that. But usually they tell me, "Yeah, Jerry, send us some of your tunes, and I'll send it to them," and that sort of thing.
So it's not usually like shake hands with the band when you get there and count off the first
Usually
tune.
they want some music beforehand. Oh, what are we going to play, Jerry? What are we going to play? So,
Hmm.
I want to make everybody comfortable. So
Yeah,
I'll just think of on the spot. Well, let's play this. Let's try that.
yeah. Do you feel that jazz chose you somehow? I read that you had an uncle that was one flight up from you,
Yes, I lived
and
in
yeah,
a
he was a jazz musician. So I'm wondering if you had other choices when you were a kid. Do you have other passions that you sort of had to decide one or the other?
you know, uh, I might be a boring person to answer this, but I didn't. I mean, of course, like all young kids, when I started playing was 8 years old on clarinet. I didn't take it seriously. Yeah, it's something I was just doing. And uh, my first record was a Lester Young record with Count Basie. Those recordings, Tinkle Toe and the Kansas City 6 or 7, I forget what it is.
Hmm.
And then I got some other Count Basie, Duke Ellington records, and then I got a small, but right from the get-go, I was listening to that. And then when I was 12, a friend of mine came over to my house, and his father was a trumpet player, and he had a Miles record with Coltrane on it, and a Sonny Rollins record, and an Art Blakey record with Wayne Shorter on. I said, "Oh my goodness!" So that's when I really got the bug.
Don't you think it's um, necessary to have that serious bug to go into jazz these days?
Yeah, I do, and you can even have a bug, but if you have other bugs so a friend of mine, Adam Nussbaum, always says, there's only one reason you should get into jazz because you can't help it. There's not that. That's just it. Because if you have choices, take the other choice.
You know,
So
some other people have said that, including Phil Woods. You
yeah,
know, you're going to be a doctor or a jazz musician. Hmm.
yeah. I always tell people you got to have a way to support your, especially in these days, your, I'll call it a jazz habit, but it could be a music habit. Uh, a way to support yourself, because the gigs are fewer. They don't pay. They pay the same that they paid 40 years ago, and you used to be able to make a living, not a great living, but playing. But today it's next to impossible.
Was that one of the reasons that you got into teaching to to support your gig habit, so to speak?
Yeah, uh, I got into teaching because I didn't want to play any gigs. I didn't want to play anymore. I didn't want to play weddings, and I didn't want to play with groups that are so loud you can't even hear a note you're playing. Rock groups or I just I'd rather be talking about the music I love and teaching it rather than doing something else. Yeah, and I found that people liked my pedagogy, the way I taught it, so they it was natural for me.
Did you have to do some serious? Oh, let me rephrase. I'm gonna guess that maybe you started teaching a few private lessons, and then to move to a university level, did you have to codify some of your own methods and prove to some committee that you were worthy of being there?
Actually, no, I didn't. I had already codified a lot of, because when I moved back to Boston after leaving Dave Brubeck in 1981, the end of 81, I put up little flyers, and in a short amount of time, I had a 2-year waiting list. 2 years. And if you want to study with me, okay, you can, but you're on a list 2 years. And it really was a 2 year waiting list. And so after years of doing that and having all the teachers from Berkeley study with me, and not all of them, but most of them, you know, and they're teaching my stuff in the school. I didn't even think about it. This is what I teach. And the only reason I was good at it is because I taught myself. Nobody showed me, so I had to learn how to play, you know. And it's the only thing I wanted to do is be a better player. So I would get systems for myself to practice. So, but then Berkeley called me up and offered me a position for low bread, and I said, man, I don't even have to uh, leave my apartment. I got a 2 year waiting list. I don't have to pay for parking, and I'm getting paid more. I'm good. New England Conservatory called me up and said, Jerry, what do you want? I said this. He said, okay, no problem. Uh, so, and that's not a put down for Berkeley at the time. That's just where they were at, you know.
Yeah. You mentioned that you mostly taught yourself, and I read I believe this is from your webpage. You said many of the veterans of the period when you were learning were not inclined to mentor newcomers. Back then, if somebody knew, they weren't going to tell you. Is that an accurate reading?
I would say so. I mean, they say, "Oh man, I don't know what I'm doing." You know, just listen to records, learn tunes. Listen to records, learn tunes. I had the greatest saxophone teacher in the world, Joe Viola at Berkeley. That when I was in high school, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, that's who I studied with, and he would play piano and we'd play tunes. Hey Joe, what's this? What is that? What is this flat nine here? Is that a, you know? So he was the greatest, but he never said, you know, we just play together and sometimes we'd listen to music together, but he was great at etudes and practice how to play the saxophone, the right technique, and
Hmm.
the most. And as soon as you heard him play, you were a believer because he just. And I'd practice a thing on the tenor saxophone all week long. I'd come in, he'd transpose it on alto. He would never make a mistake. And here I am goofing up. He was just, you know, amazing.
Oh.
And I was in John LaPorta's youth band at the Greater Boston area. Joe got me into that, and you know, a featured soloist in the band. And so, but nobody said, "Yeah, practice this, practice that." It was just like, "Yeah, okay, let me figure this out. Let me figure that out." I remember calling up Wayne Shorter one time, asking him for lessons. He said he didn't give lessons, but
So now you tell your students what to practice. People weren't telling you, but you tell them. Is that too simplistic?
no, but a few words in there that I would change, and I suggest what to practice. I don't tell anybody anything. I mean, you know what I mean? I say, if you do this, you know, this is really going to help. This is going to really. But I always leave the decision whether they want to practice or not. I tell them I don't really care if you practice. I don't care if you get better. And matter of fact, I practice because I don't care if I get better. I practice because I like practicing. It puts me in a space, a zone. It's like I call it jazz yoga. I get in that zone, physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. If you don't want to practice, cool. You know, I mean, what can I tell you? I'm
And
not.
they're paying a hefty sum to
Bingo,
be there, and so
bingo.
there's some motivation there.
Yeah.
Um, I want to read. I know there's a discussion that happens about original sound, etc. I want to read two very short quotes from. This is the generation before you and I. This is from Billy Mitchell. He said, "There's a lot of the youngsters get caught up in the proficiency and the musicality, and they forget the emotion. The emotion takes longer. You have to experience it." And from Harry Sweets Edison, "Our ambition in my day, not to be an imitator, but an originator. And they used to say they'd rather be the world's worst originator than the world's greatest imitator." Nowadays, it seems like musicians have their idols and they don't venture anyplace else but what their idol is playing. You have any comment
Yeah, I
on?
mean, I agree with both of those things, but in one, the first one was Billy Taylor, you said?
Billy Mitchell?
Billy Mitchell, sorry. Yeah, Billy Mitchell. The first thing I would say was that sometimes people, when they come into this life, they come in with heavy baggage. So they don't even need to experience a lot of emotional stuff. They already have it. You know, so depending on their upbringing, if their mother and father were fighting all the time, or they were in a poverty situation. So their experience, their soul is already, they say the soul picks the lifetime, right? So uh, I don't necessarily think that you need to get your life experience to the life you're living. You already have it.
Are you
Even though you're getting it in
okay?
this life, you already came in with something. And
Are you hinting at
yes, reincarnation.
reincarnation?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And the other thing is, would I'd rather be the worst uh, originator,
Originator.
originator than a really good copycat? And that's a, a fantastic thing because uh, in today's world, nobody learns how to play by walking out of a cave one day and they learn how to play. You have to know the history of this music. You listen to early John Coltrane, you can hear Dexter Gordon in it, you can hear Sonny Rollins in it, you can hear Jimmy Heath, you can hear, of course, Charlie Parker and everybody, but, et cetera, et cetera. And you hear, and then you can hear later Dexter and you some Coltrane things in there. But so nobody, you hear Joe Henderson's got some Sonny Rollins in there for sure. Nuke, you know, that he tips his hat to, uh, and and you hear early Sonny Rollins. If there's no Charlie Parker, there's no Sonny Rollins. Um, just the language. So everybody's getting something from somebody. It's at a certain point you say, I breathe, I'm valid. I'm going to listen to myself and try to get my sound. You don't even have to try. You can't get away from your sound. Even if you try to sound like somebody else, you're just going to end up sounding like you trying to sound like somebody else. So you just say, yeah, I'm gonna be more me and believe in yourself. I tell my students, if I could tell you one thing, believe in yourself. You're valid.
What happens when a student uses the if only I had a better mouthpiece, a different horn, I can't find a reed that works?
I, t- I tell them that they're on the wrong channel. You go to the gig. I tell them I go to the gig and I'm playing on the microphone. Man, it's too much treble. No, the reverb. It's this. There's not enough reverb. And I said, it's the wrong channel. I have to go back to the music channel. Or the drums are too loud. This. Just keep turning it back to the music channel. We all have that. It's the mind, and how they say the mind is a terrible thing to waste on drugs. I don't go that far. See, the mind is a terrible thing. End of sentence.
In other words, like don't overthink it, eh?
Yeah, don't think it. Don't overthink.
I was I saw another interview with you, which I was happy that I landed on, and you were talking about the four elements, and reminded me that I had this interesting interview with Gary Smulyan, and he had four elements of music, but they were different from yours. So before I talk about his, would you mind telling me that again?
Sure. Uh, in astrology, in metaphysics, there's four elements. There's earth, fire, water, and air. And there's three fire signs, there's three air signs, there's three water signs, and three earth signs in the 12 signs of the zodiac. Fire, of course, is energy. It could be scorched earth energy, or it could be warm fire or cool fire, it could be the fire of intuition. It could be the fire of, and in, air is intellect. And whatever frequency your mind is at, I mean, it could be higher mind, lower mind. If I'm thinking about, you know, eating all day, that's different than thinking of how to, not that that's bad, because nutrition is important, but how to invent a cure for cancer. That's things like that are so water is emotion, and the higher is inspiration. That's you're getting inspired emotion, and it comes from the emotional body, where intellect is intuition. That's the higher aspect of the mental body. And earth is groove, it's time, it's how to play your instrument. It's like, it's like I got to bring these inspiration and intuition down and make it on this planet Earth. That's Earth, earth signs. So everybody has all four. So, but to some degree or another, people might have a preponderance of a certain quality. So it's they're just words, but sometimes it gives you what you hear and say, yeah, this guy really has a lot of air, or this guy is so emotional, but maybe they could use a little bit of, this or that, whatever.
When you listen to yourself, does it occur to you that you could use a little more or a little less of something?
Yeah, sometimes I'm thinking like, yeah, it's like I was burning too hot, too much fire in that. I'm just gonna learn. I'm gonna be the less I play, the better I like it. The more I like it.
Hmm.
Things like that. Or I think that, yeah, this there's something missing here. I'll think like that. I won't necessarily. Yeah, I need more air. I need more water. No, it's more in a musical terms.
I see. Gary Smullian said his four were what you can think, what you can hear, what you can feel, and what you can execute.
Sounds similar, doesn't it?
Yes, it does indeed. It's just a different way of putting it.
Execute is earth, right? What
Yeah.
you can feel is water. What you say the other ones again?
What you can think,
Yeah, that's air.
yeah, and what you can hear,
Yeah,
what you can feel, which I guess would be like,
water.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, well, I'm glad we solved that.
yeah.
So, if you believe in that souls find a body and continue on, did you ever get any hint about what soul might have been passed to you? What kind of soul?
Yeah, the way you said the sentences to me, what soul passed to me, it's like my soul, which is, they say souls are eternal, and they say that they have hundreds of lifetimes, and you have to experience. This is the great teachers talking about reincarnation. You have to be a saint, and you have to be a sinner. One lifetime you could be a hooker. The next lifetime you're a doctor. You have to learn all the different aspects of life, and to get to the place where you don't have to come back here anymore, or whatever. But I don't know about that stuff. That's what they say. But have I had an inkling of past lifetimes? Yes, I have. When I've meditated, I've kind of think, yeah, wow, that was. I just get an intuition about it. A little.
Anything you feel like sharing?
Well, I can remember studying the stars in Peru, uh, and I'd even see the shape of the windows that I was, oh, the, and when I go look at it, investigating, that was exactly what I saw. In another one, I remember a woman who used to go to a psychic, and she said to me, "You're going to go on 4 trips this year, but one's getting canceled because one of the people in the band, you're going overseas 4 times this year, but one of the guys in the band's going to get sick, and one of the guys in the band that did get sick, Dave's son, and we canceled the trip, and Dave Brubeck's son, and she said, you were a piano player in another life." I said, "Doesn't surprise me, you know." Um, Things like that.
Hmm. Very interesting. The other day, I heard John Coltrane's um, "A Love Supreme." Part of it, they played part of it on Sirius Radio, and I started thinking about the certain decades of jazz, and it seems like for much of jazz there was a social connection that went with the music. And I'm not sure I'm correct about this, but in the 30s you had a dance and entertainment element. In the 50s, when I think of the 50s, I think of, there's this sort of hipster Dizzy Gillespie with a beret. There's a hip jiveness to it. And then in the 60s, you had civil rights element and a lot of spirituality. And I think about the current times now, and I don't know is if there a social aspect connected to jazz that is recognizable.
Yeah, people often ask me, where is jazz going? And I say, you need to ask young people because they have their finger on the pulse of the music. They know everything is coming out. They know that, So I don't know if I'm even qualified to answer that. Uh, and I agree with you about the 60s. I always tell, in a joking way, I say, yeah, the jazz universe peaked in 65, you know, with everybody was live and well. Ben Webster was live and well. Coleman Hawkins was live and well. Sonny Rollins doing his thing. John Coltrane raging. Miles Davis quintet. Everybody's live and well. The avant-garde live and well. The swing guys, the bebop guys, the hard bop guys, you know, live and well playing this great music. And being a student of it, I didn't differentiate, well, this is hip, that's not that hip, this is. But today, everything's in retrospect. These people in those schools they're not alive, a lot of these players. Um, so it's a different, and not to mention the iPhone and the computers, and you know, you wanna sound like Clifford Brown. It's probably every solo he's ever played already transcribed. Here's his favorite licks, This is what he practiced. The same thing with John Coltrane, of course, Joe Henderson and Sonny Rollins, and um, it's there on a silver platter. And you want this recording? Yeah, it's easy to get. You can have every record on a little thumb drive. Whereas back in my day, you couldn't get all the recordings. And so that's it. And somebody said to me, yeah, and back in my generation, we listened to one recording 1,000 times. Today, they listen to 1,000 recordings once. I get it. It's a different. Whether somebody is playing music for social reasons, I wonder. But I can say this though, the world has gone so materialistic. How many things can I have? Let's get some more things. But for musicians, just to play music, that's pretty amazing.
But we had things that gave us a connection to the artist. We had the LPs, we had the liner notes, we carried our LPs around in milk crates wherever we went, and there was something about having that possession that you had to work for. At least for me, it was an important part of playing music or being engaged?
Yes, yeah. I just sold my record collection,
Hmm.
and because half it was missing, people borrowing it and never returning it. Because I grew up in Watertown, Mass, and one short bus ride, I could be in Harvard Square, and I'd go to this place called Briggs and Briggs, and it was a record shop, and they had three listening booths, and I'd get a stack of records every week or every 2 weeks, and I'd always buy two or three of them. So they never gave me a hard time. Say, oh, he's in there again listening, and so I was getting all the Blue Notes, the Prestige, the Impulse when they were coming out. All the ones that people I don't go gaga over. And but yeah, I just found myself between replacing the needles and doing all this. I said, yeah, I don't need this. Plus, they were scratched to hell because a lot of times I'd be when I transcribed, I'd put the needle. Oh, let me get that because I just play along with records all day, and you know,
You got the bug.
yeah.
That's very interesting to me because I did the same thing, but a lot of times I was the person in the rock band who needed to write out the horn parts. So I remember that, dropping the needle in the
Yeah,
middle of
exactly.
that's a pretty good ear training practice right there.
Yes, you got to do it quick.
Yeah, I think I read something that made me think of Don Menza. Um, you, some anecdote about you being in a practice room at a college and someone
Yeah.
telling you to get out of there so someone
Oh,
could
yeah,
play some serious music.
that's true. That's Dr. Edward Gilday, and that's not a put down because he looked in the room, opened the door, and said, "I'm giving you the hairy eyeball. Let somebody serious about music practice in here." Now, having said that, if I went back in time and listened to myself practice, I would have thrown myself out. But you got to
Uh,
start somewhere, you know what I mean?
yeah. Well, Don went to SUNY Fredonia at the time. They didn't, have jazz, and he made a crack that playing Dixieland was a misdemeanor and playing bebop was a felony.
That's great. I love that.
So I was getting into the some of your pedagogy, of course, is online. I'm not sure it's online on purpose, or if people have,
I've given up even thinking
I
about it.
know, right. It doesn't bode well to think about it. But there was a thing you had. It was a bebop scale number two, and you were talking about playing bebop scales over the bar line. And I thought it was pretty interesting. And near the end, you said, "I'm going to do this. It's going to be boring, but hey, it's practice." So my question: how do you take those techniques like playing bebop scales over bar lines, put them into improvised solos and make them not boring?
Yeah. Well, that's where the artist comes in. There's you you can mix up the paints and try this color and that color, but after a while, you just got to say you have to forget all that. Forget everything that sort of thing, and paint a picture. Uh, So I heard a quote once that Charlie Parker said. I don't know if this is true or not. Doesn't matter because I like the story. He says, "It takes you 10 years to learn how to play. It takes you another 10 to forget what you learned." So the mind, you can't use the. They asked Sonny Rollins, "What do you think about when you play?" He said, "You can't do that." Yeah. So when you're playing, I'm only thinking of doing those sorts of things in the practice room. So I might hear them when I'm playing or uh, intuit them more because in a split second it's already gone. So uh, those are things you practice. So they might come to you when you're playing, but you're not thinking about it when you're playing because you don't have time.
I'd like to ask more about that, but I'm not sure how to ask it. If you've got these techniques in your head and then do they become in your hands do they happen without you thinking about them?
Well, uh, great question. I heard the story that when Miles was playing at the Plug Nickel, the band got together and said, let's play what we don't hear. Now, that doesn't mean, like you were saying, Gary Schmelz said, play what you hear. They're not saying that, but there's a certain things that naturally you would play. The first onslaught of ideas, don't play those. Wade through it all and get to something in the back there that's a little different, a little, you know, uh, that's one thing. Uh, so the other thing that I think of when you said that, if you're practicing doing foul shots in a basketball team or dribbling, when you're dribbling down the floor and a defender's coming at you, you don't think, well, I'm going to pass this to my left hand. It's just automatic. Same thing with shooting, it's automatic. So all these things are helping you to be more automatic if you choose to be.
Can you imagine being a situation and you're improvising and you are distracted? Let's say you've parked your car for this wherever this gig is and you think it could be towed away. Do you have a way to not let that kind of interference interfere with you?
Well, if it came to my car being towed away, no.
Okay, let me dial back on that. There's
Hey,
there's there's something noisy at the
I,
bar.
Ron, guys, excuse me, man, I got to move my car. You know, a solo I could do anytime, but getting your car towed, I'm going to take care of business.
Okay. I guess what I'm after is, noisy
People talking in a
nightclub.
club. Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
don't even pay attention to them. My attitude is, you don't bother me, I don't bother you. Some people get really annoyed. We used to play with Hal Galper. He'd stop the band and he'd get on the microphone and say, "I can hear you. Can you hear me?" And I get that. That's his way to do it. For me, I just concentrate more on the music. If these people are spending money to come, if they want to talk, go ahead. I just personally, as long as if it's, I hope it's not too loud. But even if it is, I'll probably just stop playing louder.
Of course, the people that are complaining have sat right down in front of the band.
Yeah, and they don't have, and they're clueless. They think that yeah, this is cool. I'm talking. I'm trying to have a conversation here. What's he doing up there playing? I get it.
I enjoyed listening to a tune that you wrote that you entitled "Awake."
Awake. Yeah.
Yes. Do you mind telling that anecdote that led you to that title?
Yeah. There's a story of Buddha meditating on top of a mountain, and all the villagers in the bottom of the mountain could see this light, faint but still at this light at the top of the mountain. And every day the light got a little stronger until one day the light started descending down the mountain, and it turns out it's Buddha. And a villager walks up and says, "Are you God?" "No." "Are you a saint?" "No." "Are you a prophet?" "No." "What are you?" "I'm awake." Just present, awake. So I named a tune after that story.
Nice. I like the I like the way you said you looked over at the piano player and said, This is a stolen moments change. What do we call that? A contrafact?"
Yeah.
I just love that because
Well,
I hadn't heard that word until I'd been playing music for like 40 years.
me either. I mean, contrafact, I never heard the term contrafact.
Yeah.
So I don't call them contrafacts, I call them counterfeits.
Oh man. Then when you said that awake, I think of, well, there's a current term now called woke.
Woke.
Are you woke?
Are you woke? What does woke mean? Are you a liberal?
I believe it's definitely connected with that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm a radical liberal.
Good for
Yeah.
you.
I like music. I think the election wasn't stolen. I think that it was a big insurrection, and yeah, I'm not, and I think people should have the right to vote. They shouldn't be like make it harder for people to vote. They should make it easier for people to vote. Is that being woke? I don't. If it is, I guess I'm woke.
Should be kind of the thing to be, you would think, and which sort of leads me to a question I don't always ask, but when you look at the state of the country right now, how do you feel about it?
Okay, can we talk? There's a thing called, and maybe you'll look this up when we finish. It's called Pluto Return USA. When the United States' Declaration of Independence was written in the time, there's an astrology chart for it. And the astrology chart, Pluto, which rules death, transformation, plutocrats, Pluto takes 246 or 48 years to go through a zodiac, to go through the zodiac. And it's before it even gets to the exact spot, you're feeling it 4 or 5 years before, and you'll feel it 3 years after. Because it hits that spot 3 times. Because and it's here now. And you can tell it's the death of democracy, where oligarchs are with money in politics, with ruling elections, with saying the elections were stolen and all, and even though the court said no, that's not true. Fox News spouting all this stuff. I mean, and Pluto return rules transformation, and it goes out in all the corners of the room and cleans out all the stuff, all the, and it's going to happen this week. First of all, it happened exactly. It's 27 degrees 33 minutes Capricorn. That's where Pluto was, and at that time, that happened February 21st, but it took 5 years for it to lead up to it. And Donald Trump and the Republicans, or the Democrats, anybody who's corrupt, criminal. I'm not saying it's just Republicans, even Democrats, whoever. It's cleaning house. I hope it works. And it wasn't until uh, the Roman Empire wasn't until their second Pluto return that folded. Pluto returned, did away with Napoleon. Uh, Pluto return did away with Stalin. You go and the 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 UK. It's here.
Can we live through it?
Well, I'm hoping uh, that out of the ashes of the dead self rises the phoenix. That's what they say, and that's what a Pluto return could be. And let's see if we have enough spiritual guidance in this country to get us there, because the forces of materialism are just so strong. It's like it's a battle. But
Do you
that's why music is so important. That's why all musicians have a, a, a balancing out all that stuff to do something because you love it, because you just love it. It doesn't matter how good you are, how, it's music. Great.
you just answered the question I was trying to form in my head, so thank you. I mean, you take refuge in your music. Does it inspire you to compose?
Yes, it inspires me to compose. One of the things that I've done in this, you asked me about at the beginning about COVID. When COVID first started, I uh, I was getting on Zoom, and I was playing with a drummer from Germany, a bass player from Malmo, Sweden, a piano player from Newton, right outside of Boston. We try to play, of course, because of the latency, we couldn't play time, so we played things that were out of time, or sometimes the drummer would say, "Oh man, you're 2 beats in front of me," so I would try to anticipate the changes by 2 beats and make it sound normal to him. But then I said, I'm going to do some live streams, And to make a long story short, I've been doing live streams for a year and a half now. I've done 309 of my tunes, originals, as well as 40 of a friend of mine's, and the drummer had maybe 30 of his tunes. And every week we play different tunes. But now, because I ran out of tunes, I'm starting to do repeats.
Um, that's like a inspiration and a compelling thing right there. Like I've got this way of presenting this stuff. It's time to write something new.
Yes,
How do you start? How do you start writing something new?
I get a little idea. For example, I might think of a little rhythm. I might think of a harmonic device, a melodic, a shape of a melody. I'm saying I'm going to write this melody, just this shape, uh, uh, and I could do the chords as I go along, or I might even do it to a standard tune or whatever. So every tune I write has a different. Sometimes I think I'm gonna write this tune just using four intervals. That's it. I'm gonna use this. I'm gonna write this tune um, with uh, a lot of space. I'm going to write a lot of uh, major, non-conventional harmony, or that sort of thing. But out of 309 tunes that I just got through, and of course I have written so many more than that, but those are the only ones I felt like playing. Uh, every one of them, there's not like they're all different. They all have a little. They're just little improvisations. And what I tell my students, I said, if I told you right now, I'm going to give you $10,000 if you can write five tunes in 2 hours, you'd write five tunes in 2 hours. And that's the attitude. Don't care if they're good, just write them.
Don't care if they're good, just write them.
Just write them.
Hmm.
If I try to write the perfect tune, I'll end up spending 2 months. I'll end up with a tune I don't even like that much. They're just little improvisations.
I see.
And if Herbie Hancock played any, they would sound like the greatest tune ever. And if you can get the greatest tune written was ever written and give it to a student, maybe, and it might not sound that good.
Oh, that's a wonderful point. That's true. Um, yeah, because you just set it in motion and people can carry it out in different ways.
Yes.
Wow. Ah. The there was a period in New York when you were there. It sounded like I think I read you had some couple roommates that shared your passion. Harvey S. and
Harvey S. He was
yeah,
my roommate.
yeah.
And I just got through playing with him last night. He just left right at 1 o'clock because he stayed over with his wife Yukimi, and they just left going back to New York. Oh no, I think he's hanging with his cousin today. Anyway, uh, yeah. So I moved in with Harvey in Rego Park, Queens, and he was working with Lee Konitz, Micah Benny, this guy, that. He was working all the time. So people would call him up to do a gig. Say, hey man, you need a tenor player? You need a tenor player? So he was really helpful. Yeah. And then I moved into Manhattan with Art Barron, who was on the road with Duke Ellington's band, right on 6th Avenue. On 819, 821, there's a whole documentary called The Jazz Loft, and where Phil Woods used to go play there, and Zoot Sims, and all these guys, a generation or two before me. And it was the same place, except mine was this window and theirs was that window. I was 821, theirs was 819. And we could play music 24/7.
Did your parents support your obvious bug, your passion?
No, but they didn't tell me not to. They didn't say, yeah, man, keep practicing. You know what? They just, oh, this guy's nuts. Look at him. What's he, you know, that sort of thing. Just left me alone, which is good enough.
And did your gig playing uncle get to see you play?
Yes, but not really. He wasn't like I mean, he saw me play with Dave Brubeck, on TV or whatever, or or heard me on records and things like that. But he never like came to my gigs or anything like
I
that.
see.
He wasn't supportive in that way, but
Uh-huh.
uh, yeah, just what it was.
Yeah. When you think of Dave Brubeck as a person, is there anything you can share with us, sort of beyond his music?
He was a devoted family man. Even though he was on the road all the time, his kids used to call him UD, Uncle Dave.
Oh,
Uh, but yeah, he, was dedicated to his kids and his wife, and yeah, strong family man.
later in life, there was a lot of spirituality in the
And
things
his
he
wife.
wrote.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say I got to interview him and Iola, and I would say they are a very definition of woke, if we're looking for one.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did not object to the fact that you played differently than some of his previous saxophone players. Is that a good guess?
Yes, he never told me once how to play. Not once. He never said, "Yeah, I want you to play more like Paul Desmond," who I idolized. I would like to be able to play like Paul Desmond. Who wouldn't? But that's not the way I played. That's not my
Hmm.
personality. Uh, yeah, he never told me, and I think he appreciated that. And besides, when you think about it, anybody who was into the Paul Desmond camp, you're you're gonna lose because nobody's gonna sound as good playing like Paul Desmond as Paul Desmond, right? So I didn't play anything like that, so that's a good thing. You can't compare apples and oranges.
Okay. Let me ask you about you do some ensemble work at the New England
Yes.
Conservatory. Do you try to teach some of the things, the jazz bandstand practice, the elements of getting a gig and keeping a gig and bandstand etiquette? Is that something that you can teach in a rehearsal room?
I think you can teach it by setting an example, not by telling somebody. But if you're a serious musician and also have a good sense of humor, don't take yourself too seriously, not a prima donna, you know, I think those are good examples. I think like just the way I treat the people in the ensemble, I treat them the way I would like to be treated. So I'm not shouting at anyone. I'm not like saying, "Hey, that was terrible. How you call yourself?" I don't do any of that stuff. I try to encourage him, and I'll stop the band and say, "Yeah, let's get this together." But it's always in a um, with the intention of positive critique.
Hmm.
So, and I'll even say, "What did you think of that? Uh, how did you feel about that?" I'll ask them what they think.
Hmm.
And I tell them that, we're all musicians here. Let's use our group ear and try to get to what we think is going to make this song or this concert sound good.
What kind of things would happen that you would take a musician off your list? In other words, most of us have lists. We get a gig, and unless you have an established band, then you start calling musicians to play it. Why would you take someone off your list?
Well, say I called somebody like 3 or 4 times and they can't do the gig. Uh, After a while, I'm going to stop calling them, but that's, because they're just not available. If they don't show up to a gig, if they don't show up twice, if they uh, come in real drunk, which hasn't happened really. I mean, I can remember maybe once or twice, but uh, that kind of thing. Or if they're, but if they don't get along with the other guys in the band. But most of the time, I'm hiring people that I already know are that have a great reputation for that. You know, I
Hmm.
mean, good reputation for getting along with people. They're team players, so to speak. Uh, yeah,
Do you ever make suggestions to the group? Um, I'm thinking of the fact that if you have a quartet, there's a lot of different possibilities to sound different than a quartet. You could have bass and saxophone alone, drums and saxophone alone. Do you ever do like instant arranging?
I like it when the group does that. You know, instant for example, I play with some groups, and all of a sudden the drummers will just drop out behind you. You know, and it's kind of cool because it surprises you. They didn't tell you they were going to do that. They just do it, and you're just sitting there and got to
Yeah.
come up with the goods. You know, uh, and or I'll say, yeah, I want to start this out with just a bass. Yeah, all of that to make a music that could be kind of one dimensional have more dimensions.
Yeah, I've noticed that when someone drops out, that's one effect, and when they come back in, that's another effect.
That's another effect.
Yeah. Some people don't think of those kinds of things. They feel like if I'm not playing a lot, then I'm not doing my job.
Yeah, and yeah, that's yeah. And like bass players, you mentioned Harvey S. And I tell Harvey, I said, man, I really like it that I don't have to tell you when to play in two, when to play broken time, when to walk, when not to walk, when to play open. You know, he just knows when to do it.
Hmm.
I don't have to tell him.
Let me run a couple names by you. If you saw them or if they particular personality or musicianship meant much to you. Cannonball Adderley.
Yes, man, I remember seeing him with the Fiddler on the Roof gig with Charles Lloyd, uh, Joe Zawinul, Sam Jones, and Louis Hayes, and Nat, of course. And I nudged the guy next to me. I said, "Man, he doesn't move his fingers. He played this real fast thing. It's all like little twitch like Charlie Parker's. You know, there's like sleight of hand movement. You know, it just amazed me. Not to mention him talking on the mic and being so positive and uplifting. Yeah, what a amazing.
Yeah. How about the um, Pharoah Sanders and the late John Coltrane? That music that was so filled with, I don't have the word for it, but it was so filled with over the top. Now I'm getting into where I didn't want to go. So,
Well, you know, I saw the Coltrane quartet maybe a half dozen times, and with McCoy, Elvin, and Jimmy. And one time in 1963 at the Newport Jazz Festival, Roy Haynes, I was there. And it's funny because Count Basie was on the afternoon, uh, Woody Herman, and Coltrane comes on, it's dusk, and people are leaving in droves. They just, weren't ready for that type of music. But by the time Pharoah Sanders came in the group, I was totally into another kind. I was listening to Miles with Wayne, and I saw that group so many times in all their reincarnations. When Dave Holland first joined the group, when uh, Chick Corea and Jack DeJohnette. One time I even saw them with Wynton Kelly on piano, Keith Jarrett on organ, and Chick Corea on electric piano. 3 keyboards. Another time I saw him with Joe Henderson and Wayne at Lenny's on the Turnpike. So, but as I used to see Roland Kirk there and Wynton Kelly trio, and but I never saw the group with Farrow. I saw Farrow play with his group, but I never saw him with John Coltrane. I wish I had.
hmm. Well, that group, from your four elements, his late recordings, Ascension and
I listened to all the recordings, but I never saw
yeah,
them.
okay. Would you would you say that he had a preponderance of one of those or two of those elements that you talked about?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah,
And what would they be?
I would say fire for
Uh-huh.
sure. Fire and in water.
Lots of emotion. Yes,
Yeah,
that's for sure.
yeah. Scorched earth, fire.
Yeah, scorched earth.
Yeah.
One more. What about Hank Mobley?
Never got to see him live.
No.
Shame. You know, by the time I saw Miles, it was with Wayne, and I saw Wayne with Art Blakey and Freddie Hubbard and
Hmm.
uh, Curtis Fuller and Jimmy Merritt. Yeah, Cedar Walton.
Did you ever feel like you were born a little too late?
No,
I'm glad.
I never felt that way. Um, yeah, I don't regret not being around during the heyday of what and there's some people say, man, don't worry about it. There was never a heyday, but uh,
Yeah,
I, I don't regret being born when I was born.
the good old days are now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. Now's the time.
Now, key of F, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's coming up in the near future for you? Got the summer off from?
No, I got a gig in Brooklyn Thursday, but then I'm coming. I have to go to St. John's Island. I've got a gig up there with a Jim Vivian, a great bass player. He got a grant to have musicians come and play up there, do a concert. And then I'm going to Europe, to Denmark for 2.5 weeks, mostly Denmark. I'm going to Berlin for a couple of days. Then I come home, going to Montreal to do a recording with Remy Bolduc, great alto player who teaches at McGill, doing a jazz camp in August, Jazz in the Mountains in Vermont. And June 30th, also September 2nd and September 4th, I'm playing with the Elvin Jones uh, 50th anniversary of Live at the Lighthouse with Dave Liebman, Gene Perler, Adam Nussbaum. So we're playing those tunes from that album.
You have a full plate.
Full plate.
Yeah. Well, I've absolutely enjoyed this conversation, and I'm going to have that Pluto thing on my mind.
Just check it out. First just go Pluto Return, and then Pluto Return USA. Nobody ever has a Pluto Return in their own chart. You don't live 248 years. So, but countries have Pluto Returns. So check it out. It's heavy.
All right. Well, you're a heavy musician, and thank you for sharing what you did today.
Thank you so much, Monk.
All
Appreciate it.
right. I'll pause us, and then we'll say our goodbyes.
Okay.